And we're gonna lean into some uncomfortableness, okay? So you ready? This is a safe place. We're gonna just lean into it. Who here thinks the project is good? Like generally thinking, yeah, okay, I can get on board with this, no pun intended, this works. Who here is like, I still have some reservations. I'm just neutral at this point. I have some reservations. Okay, a few hands. Should we suggest the balance of you all are not for this project? Who's just like, no, I really don't want to see this project. Okay, that's fair. That's fair. That's exactly what we're here for, is to kind of open that up and talk about the discussion. So I just want to acknowledge Paul, my partner here in this conversation, and we just really want to be real in these moments because these are big projects. I've had the opportunity to work on almost a half dozen in the metro. Real in these moments because these are big projects. I've had the opportunity to work on almost a half dozen in the metro and in other parts of the country. Paul brings some really good experience as well. And these are not easy things. They are for the long term. I mean, there are grandchildren maybe writing these systems, right? And when you think about where these projects started. So it's fair not to feel completely excited. It's fair. Development really is for the people. And so this session is going to explore that. So I know we have an hour. We might be short of that just because of the conversation, but we definitely want to connect with folks here. So you've heard a little bit about me. I'm going to have Paul introduce himself and kind of get us started on, but first you should know who Paul is.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Paul Balknight. I am a Northsider. I've been living and working out here for 30 plus years. I know a lot of you in the audience because I've been around. I'm an architect by training, and I basically cut my teeth on really hard, challenging, community-driven projects, starting with Legacy Village, where I did the redevelopment, Heritage Park, I did the design for the Urban League, Summit Academy, Siege Academy. So I've been around a lot, and then I've also had the opportunity to work in a lot of different spaces and systems, including at Hennepin County at African American Men Project, Minneapolis Parks Foundation as their project implementation director, running my own architecture firm, and now running an organization called the Center for Transformative Urban Design, which is all about how do we create equitable and inclusive communities by really focusing on the part that a lot of times we don't think about is how policy and culture drives what happens in the built environment. I'm also the convener of for Minneapolis St. Paul for a national organization called Reimagining the Civic Commons, which is 10 cities, which I don't have memorized, which is why I wrote them down this morning. Akron, Camden, Philadelphia, Detroit, Cincinnati, Lexington, Macon, San Jose, Minneapolis St. Paul. So, and that's all about how do we use public space and civic assets to bring people together and make social and economic change. And here where we're working is here in Minneapolis and in St. Paul, Arcade Street, Penumbra, Rondo. So that's the work I do, and I teach at MCAD. So I don't sleep a lot, obviously. I'm much better when I'm busy. Ask my wife. And recently I've had a chance to work a lot nationally. So I'm excited to share that work and the opportunity to think about holistically, because that's really what this is about. It is holistic, and what a lot of people said, it is about people. Cities are social constructions. They are not physical constructions. They are social constructions. So if you're not talking about people and how what we do enhances people's lives, you're missing the whole point. So
all right, thank you. So show of hands, Paul's okay to talk with us today? Like he comes with some really good street cred. Thank you for that. So maybe before we get into it, let's talk about just sort of our whole system in terms of transit, Paul, if that's okay. Like, how do you think about that's going in terms of it? We have light rail, we have an incredible bus system as well, we have ABRT, all of these are opportunities to invest, but it all has to connect, right? So what is the value of transit to you as you think about some of this as we go forward?
So I think the real value is freedom. So your ability to go where you need to go to be the best person you can be, to connect to whatever amenities or whatever you need as an individual, as a community, as a family. That's really what it's about, right? And so having, as we said, a multimodal transit system that allows everyone, regardless of whether they have a car or not, to go where they need to go. And to be connected, we're all connected by these things, right? But really, the real connection is this kind of connection and being able to get to those other places, right? Mm-hmm. So I think that's really where what the point really needs to be, and how we're obviously struggling to overcome, a 60-year legacy of the car is the only way to get to where you need to go.
Yeah. Freedom. We could use a little bit more of that. I think what I also hear in your response is like some of the values that we heard freedom, right, and connection. How do you bring that into your work? Are there other values that you really kind of have as your North Star and principles?
Sure. So obviously, as I said, for me, my work is all about how do I make people's lives better, right? Early, and I'm very aware that the building is like at the end of the process, right? The building's at the end of the process. The beginning of the process is why should you do that, and how does it help people, right? And so, I also read a lot, and I'm pretty wonky, but in Andre Perry's first book, Know Your Price, he says, build people, not buildings, because he's really telling us that if we do the hard work on the social, economic front, right, change these oppressive systems, then people will prosper and they'll be able to make a difference in their community. So I work there, and I also work really hard on getting people to understand how these systems work, building knowledge. Work really hard on how we diversify who does the work, which I think is so important, which is still very male and very white. So that space, and then really getting all of us to think more about space and place, which are things we kind of take for granted. We just operate in it without really thinking about how it really affects us. So, space can be really liberating, like being in here right now with all of you and having a conversation, or it can be really oppressive, like how highways have blown through communities and separated them. So you really gotta think about what are we doing with space in place, and we really want it to be a liberating experience and not an oppressive system.
Appreciate that. So today we're talking about dreaming, and we're talking about what can happen, and then begin to think about the structures and the pieces that can get to that. As we think about the Blue Line and all of the connectivity that it brings in terms of people and our communities itself, I would love to hear from you. What excites you about the Blue Line extension? We have great maps around the room here, and as you take a look at these spaces, what kind of says, ooh, this is pretty exciting here?
So for me, when I think about this, is what excites me about is how the Blue Line is another opportunity to leverage what's already in community. So how do you build on assets that are already here? As we've already heard, there is no silver bullet and there's no one magic solution. And also what's already in community. So how do you build on assets that are already here? As we've already heard, there is no silver bullet and there's no one magic solution. And also, how can it enhance connectivity that's already there? I mean, one of the problems when we talk about a lot of these corridors, they say corridors, and that makes you imagine kind of a tunnel, right? As opposed to the reality is we're putting something into places that already exist and into connections that are already here. So how does this enhance those connections and those opportunities? And then how does it give people, all the people, opportunity to do more? And I think, when we get more into community ownership and other real estate structures and other ways, I think that's where the excitement is. And obviously, connectivity to the region is so important, right? We all are not, even despite COVID, some of us are going to leave the house and go work somewhere. and the is really an important thing, right? And so economic mobility is critical, and it's part of why you need different ways to get around, right? All that's really important. It's all really important for how you get around. So I think, somebody had on the slide, I think it was Ricardo, that it's not about the train, it's about the people. And I keep going back there. That's really what it's about. It's about the people.
Exactly. Getting some confirmation and nodding our heads on that as well. Kind of going back to one of the slides, and I heard the gasp, right, when they showed the 2006 pre-development of the Green Line, and then what happened afterwards, right? That was pretty powerful to see some of those purple lines in particular really kind of like almost reach the sky, it seems like. So we know development will occur, and part of our purpose here is to explore whose development and what are those strategies. So Paul, could you hit for us some really good examples of how community has been leading in that area and kind of what has happened? So take all the time you want.
Okay, so I think this is a really important topic, because we know that development is a market activity, and we know that the market is not fair or equitable. And we have to be honest about that. And we also know that, when we talk about building wealth and prosperity and we talk about home ownership, that's a market activity too. So we have tension between, as the gentleman here earlier talked about, he bought a house and his property value is going up. We have tension between, we want people to own a home. We want them to stay there. We don't talk about he bought a house and his property value is going up. We have tension between, we want people to own a home. We want them to stay there. We don't want them to be pushed out if their value goes up. But we also shouldn't, and this is a conversation I have all the time, we also shouldn't be, particularly for black communities and other communities of color, say, if you live here, your property values can't go up. So we can't tell people the American dream is to own a home and build prosperity for your children and then tell them cooperative structures, all of those things, right? But when we get to the commercial real estate side too, which like along corridors, we have a lot of commercial development and mixed use development. We also know that on the commercial side, people of color own like 1% of commercial real estate development, right? The other secret of how to build wealth is to own commercial real estate development. Right. So, but we don't own a whole lot of commercial real estate. So the places and the tools that I think that, and places that are out there doing really great work around that is a project called Buy Back the Block. A guy named Lanier Richardson, who's pioneered this work to go into communities where particularly retail and commercial strips aren't working. Acquire them, working with communities so that you have the kind of services and amenities that we were all just talking about. Like, okay, like why did Cub leave, University Avenue? So that's one. There's some really good work going on in Detroit, the services and amenities that we were all just talking about. Like, okay, like why did Cub leave, University Avenue? So that's one. There's some really good work going on in Detroit around all those structures. As we all know, Detroit went through a bankruptcy. It's struggling with really great redevelopment in its downtown, but still in neighborhoods. Still that development not happening in neighborhoods. So there's a lot of work around food sovereignty and development there with community ownership. One of my favorite projects is in San Diego, California, called Market Creek Plaza, which is a community-owned commercial strip center that has a grocery store, all the things you think about. What's exciting about Market Creek is a couple things. First of all, it was an abandoned, almost Superfund site, right? That's number one. So we all know, and I know Commissioner Fennell, you particularly know how hard it is to redevelop environmentally degraded sites. The community is extremely diverse, Black, Asian, Pacific Islanders, right? And also, and with that diversity comes conflict, because we all culturally don't see this the same way. Okay, so the Jacobs Family Foundation, which are the people who own Jacobs Engineering, for you engineering nerds in the room, came to say, well, how can we help the community redevelop this site? Food desert, like all the things we know when we talk about, disinvested communities. Where this is unique is that they develop a structure where people in the community own part of the strip center. And I think that's where, for me, where the excitement starts to come is where I, as a resident, get to be part of making change, and I also get to be part of the financial upside, hopefully, of the development. So Market Creek is, and you can go look up Market Creek, is one of these projects where and it's early, it's before crowdfunding, it's before we changed the rules about accredited investors, all that kind of fun stuff. So it's really a pioneer in how do you engage communities and get them to be investors in a project. So, and a lot of this work is like, no one's gonna get rich. I'm not saying, a lot of community ownership, you're gonna get rich, but you do now have a financial share, and that also means you do have a say in what happens, and you do have power in what goes on or doesn't go on, right? And for us and for community, I think that's so critical, because so many times we're going like, well, why did that leave? Or why did that change? Or who gets to decide why that happens, right? So being able to be part of these structures, right, that do that work and having a say is really important. So there's that. There's some work in Portland, Oregon, around kind of the same thing around commercial. There's obviously right here Rondo Community Land Trust, and they have their commercial part of Land Trust too. There's Land Trust here, and I think it takes all of those kinds of systems and to working together to make it right, because sometimes a land trust is better for affordability and to hold land, right, and to keep it affordable. Sometimes cooperative ownership makes more sense in terms of what we need to do. Sometimes fractional investment is another vehicle, right? So I think it's like, okay, there's a lot of tools, and it's also an understanding, well, which tool works where in what piece, and not saying, well, we're going to only do one thing, right? And a lot of times in development, we kind of get in a rut and we say, oh, this is the one tool we have, and therefore we're going to use it on every project, right? And so we have to really be, be broad, and then we also have to be open to new strategies and new ways of thinking and continue to innovate. And also, there are smart people everywhere, right? And I'm not afraid, right, to be like, yep, those people over there in Seattle right now are smarter than people in Minneapolis about this. And we're gonna go borrow that idea from them and apply it to our context, right? The whole beauty of being a globally connected populace is that, yeah, you have access to all this great stuff, and you can get to it and use it and apply it. I think the most important thing is, right, understanding your context and how you do the work.
I appreciate that, and I think that goes back to the comment we heard about the Green Line. What best practices could we bring in and kind of build on? I appreciate that, and I think that goes back to the comment we heard about the Green Line. What best practices could we bring in and kind of build off? It's very important that we are learning from each other and from other community members. We're going to just kind of transition a little bit here. Earlier this summer, Paul, you actually hosted an event that talked about some great projects around the country, brought in some really good thought leaders in this area as well in terms of community-led development. There was a particular project called Destination Crenshaw in California that you really highlighted as well. And Jason Foster, who is the executive director and CEO, we had tried to plan to get him with us. Eventually that will happen. We'll have Jason hopefully join us at some point. But the work that he's been doing and the work that the community is doing for Destination Crenshaw is really held up as a model for community wealth building, and I'm just going to let that community wealth building. It's a destination focused on Black excellence, and it really brings in that piece of whose development are we doing this for. It's centered around an LRT project as well, coincidentally. So could you talk to us a little bit about why Destination Crenshaw could be something that we take a look at, not copy, because I just heard your comment about what tools kind of work, and we may have to pivot and expand the toolbox, but what excites you about Destination Crenshaw and what they've done in Blue Line Extension?
Sure. So Destination Crenshaw is one of my favorites, as you know, since I've been talking to you about it for 3 years. And the reason it's so important, and I think it's so valid, is because it's a community-driven response to light rail, right? So just like here in Crenshaw, everyone was not excited about light rail coming to the community. And there was a lot of concern about the train going right down Crenshaw Boulevard, which is the heart of Crenshaw, and what was going to happen, and how was that going to impact community, and it was going to be, negative. There was an earlier push for the train to be underground, which I remember for the Green Line. There was a lot of discussion about should the train be underground too. I assume there, like here, was a cost factor that put the train at the surface. So one thing is that it's like, yes, Destination Crenshaw did not grow out of a collective, yes, this is wonderful moment. Destination Crenshaw grew out of a decision has now been made about where the train's going to go. Even a struggle for stops in Crenshaw, which is a decision has now been made about where the train's going to go. Even a struggle for stops in Crenshaw, which is the first stop coming from the airport, right? So if you can imagine how many people are going to pass through there, and what as Jason describes it, a authentically Black cultural experience that unites community, builds economic impact, and shares the history and strength of Black people with the rest of Los Angeles and the world, right? So, and we're going to see a little video towards the end here, but what you'll see is that the video is not focused, and I think this is really important. The video is not, you're not going to see a whole lot of pictures of the train going by, but you're going to see a whole lot of pictures of what the community is doing, right? And the other important part here is that the transit, whatever their transit organization is called, it wasn't their idea to do Destination Crenshaw. It was the community's idea to say, no, this is what we should do, and then saying to the transit, okay, you need to work with us to get here. And I think that's really important, right? So this is a truly community-driven project. This is not Sam comes and says, hi, I want to do transit, do you like it? What would you like to see? Would you like the bricks to be red or blue? Right? That's not what this is. This is a true co-creation and power-sharing approach, right? And we all know how hard it is to share power, right? Even in your own household, you know how hard it is to share power, right? So this is really when you look at how, right? And we all know how hard it is to share power, right? Even in your own household, you know how hard it is to share power, right? So So this is really, when you look at how work in community gets done, this is kind of incredible because it's how it's driven. And that also means that any community can drive this kind of change if you decide we're going to do this work, and if you're honest too about, because when Jason was here virtually talking about the project, he was real honest too that there are people who still are not happy about the direction, right? So the other thing that I've learned in my 30 years being out here working is that you're never going to get everybody to be in total agreement, right? There's going to be some, I'm not happy, I don't agree with that, right? And that's, right? But it's going forward, and I'm like, okay, right? So I think it's also important to know that there's no kumbaya. There's no kumbaya in community development. There's no kumbaya. None, right? There's no kumbaya, right? And healthy debate and tension is important, and it is part of any project undertaking that you're going to do. And you got to be able to embrace it, right? And we here have a hard time sometimes saying, yeah, we're going to embrace, right, tension, right? We want to be like, no, everybody's going to be okay. No, there's going to be tension, right? Respectful tension is perfect. Tension breeds innovation, right? If there aren't people asking hard questions or saying, hey, no, I think you should do it a different way, you don't get any change. So Destination Crenshaw will say to you, yeah. And so their bigger pieces are, it's not just about the culture and the art, the park they're developing, like all of that. It's about, they have 70% participation, minority participation in the workforce for the LRT, right? Which is huge, right? Yeah. I never got to 70%. I'm gonna tell you that. I worked on a lot of projects. I've never seen 70%. Have you? Okay. I've never seen 70%. So there's 70. There's that. There's business development that they're working on with the business owners along the boulevard. There's the hard work about gentrification and displacement, right? And that dynamic. And Jason has a phrase where he says, like, don't sell grandmama's house, because a lot of times displacement is also about other people benefiting from communities as they begin to change, and communities that have struggled and their property values haven't risen, whatever, at times feel like, okay, I'm just done, I'm gonna go. Like someone shows up, already paying attention and going, okay, I know this is gonna go up, so I'm gonna try to get here. So holding on is important, right? And also doing the hard work that we're doing about how do you make sure people can stay here, right? And not get displaced for the numerous reasons that we've already talked about. So, those are the big things I think for Destination Crenshaw. And so with that, somebody who's more tech savvy than I am, who can play the video.
During one of our meetings, Nipsey Hussle raises his hand and he says, they intended for Crenshaw to be a pass-through. We need to make it the destination. Destination Crenshaw. And the name was born. At the moment the decision was made to run the Crenshaw line at grade, effectively splitting our community in half, disrupting business line at grade, effectively splitting our community in half, disrupting business and disrupting the boulevard, it was like a punch in the gut. The city stood the chance of losing the heart of the Black community, which is what drives Los Angeles as the creative capital of the world. When we see a setback, folks get busy. And so folks in the community started looking at this 1.3 miles as an opportunity to build up our community rather than an intrusion to tear it apart. Destination Crenshaw is a 1.3 mile open air People's Museum of Public Art dedicated to the history and the story and the hopes and dreams of Black people on the West Coast. We're driven towards our mission to build this project for us, by us, and create a scenario where our culture will be celebrated, and others will come along to do it with us.
Yeah, absolutely. That is so exciting to see that kind of come to fruition in implementation for a community. That didn't obviously happen overnight, and you talked a little bit about the struggles. But Paul, could share with us, knowing that you've worked with Jason and some of the folks over there, like what excites you for the Blue Line? You know, you talk a little bit about, yes, space and people coming together, but what else are we kind of missing that we can kind of bring into the conversation as well?
Not yet.
Yeah.
Not
We
yet.
we will take some questions. Oh, yeah.
Oh,
Let's
We're
let's
holding questions and comments until after the end of their presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. We can come back to that. I
We
appreciate
will
that.
definitely come back to the video.
Yep.
Don't worry.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, a little bit about Crenshaw and Blue Line Extension.
So I think the strength of Destination Crenshaw is, like I said, what you saw was all the stuff not about the train, right? You, in that video, like, you didn't see the train go by, really. You saw some shots of construction, but you saw all the other things. And I think for Blue Line, the opportunities, as we talk about cultural placemaking, is how is art more than just at the stations? How is culture more than just at the stations, right? I think this is about, like, their total culture environment, not just like, what we're going to do at the actual stations. And we tend to focus, I think, too, on a lot of times TOD, right? The station stops are really important for what happens around them. But I really think we have to think about the whole thing, right? And what's the connectivity, right? Because the line on the map that says, okay, now I've left, Minneapolis and I'm in Robinson or wherever, right? Okay, fine, but in terms of how things happen and physicality, that doesn't matter that much. So that's also about how do all the communities think about what we need individually and together so you can actually get more than you can by yourself. So I think that's that. I'm really and how can Blue Line be, because of its scale, size, and duration and longevity, how does it become a way to connect for all of the other work, right? Because I think we don't. A lot of times we have projects that happen, and the reason I talk about this as an initiative, because anytime you have a generational investment in something that's about 100 years, right? It has to be able to be now and in the future, and also, like, we don't know how it's going to interact in the future, so it's kind of a continuum. But I think this is an opportunity to think about all of the things we talk about, right, up and down, and then, okay, here's a big platform with a lot of money that's going to come in, right? A lot of money that's going to come in, and then how do you leverage that money? Because we know investment follows investment, right? So then the question is, right, who benefits from the investment, right? And how can folks who don't normally participate in that investment process participate and benefit? And I think and how do we hold all that together? Which is really where the hard part is. And Jason, we wanted Jason to be here virtually because I knew he wasn't going to come in person because he's too busy. And he actually sent me an email and said, Paul, right now, I'm exhausted, I'm overwhelmed, and I really need to focus on our project. And I think that's the other part of this work is really hard, and it's really taxing, and it will burn you out. And so we need everyone to be part of this, right, to get it done. Like, Jason is an incredible guy. Those are the real opportunities.
I appreciate that, and you hit on a couple of things, and we can explore this a little bit. I am checking the time here. Durability, sustainability, people around the table. How does that happen? Because I think also what happens, some of these projects can be decades long, right? Some of the folks that are here today might not be here in the future, and the folks that are going to be in the corridor in the future are not here today. Crystal, I'm holding you accountable. You're not even in this room, so we're going to make sure we're going to get Crystal in the room. Wait, we have folks. Okay, wonderful. Thank you. Thank you. Yay. Gossip. All right, it's fantastic. Did I miss you earlier? If I missed you, my apologies. Okay, all right. Crystal in the house. Okay, I love it. So, we're talking about how many communities here, neighborhoods, and probably everybody here, and of what this should be. How do you build sustainable tables that brings everybody's best, but know that, you're not going to be able to take everybody's best all the time and implement it, but it should be part of the idea generation and coming in. And how do you sustain that for 5, 10, 15, 20 years? Like, what secret sauce have you seen to bring this into the conversation?
Okay, well, I don't think there's a lot of deep secret sauce, but I think there's a couple things. I think one is it's always about relationships and not about things, right? So relationship is the driver, right? So we have to be building relationships. Right? And so, I'm a Northsider, and we all know that, like, there's a community engagement meeting every other night for something, right? All right? And so we're all like, God, I don't want to go to another blasted community engagement meeting where people ask me the same question about what do I want, okay? All right? So I believe that if we're building relationships and we know people, we know community, we have we have an idea where people are at. Right? We may not know intimately everything, but we have an idea. And so you don't have to come and ask me, okay, right, do you want safe streets, good schools, jobs, right, and place for your kids to play? Like, yeah, we all want that. Like, stop. Okay, so relationship is really important. And building relationships, we all know is work, right? You have to work at it all the time, right? And so I think that's one. Truth and transparency and trust is the other ones, right? Like, you got to be honest with people about how stuff works, why some things enough of them, so when I get tired, I can tap out and Sam can be, right? So those things. And then I also think that if there's a lot of ideas in the room, like some of those may fit for the blue line, but some of those may go for something else. So then it's about having the connections to the other things that are going on to go like, okay, yeah, that's not a blue line thing, but that's a North Side Forward thing. So we know that, right, we're going to go over there now and do this, right? So that's also about understanding all of the resources and all the things that are going on in the community and all the things that are happening so that you can plug into them, right, to bring that together. Because, like I said, there's not one good idea and there's not one solution. So we got to be able to manage multiple strategies at the same time, and we got to have those people who are doing that work to help us do that.
Love it. I'm just going to take some questions, if that's okay. I'm going to be looking at our coach here, who's keeping us on time and moving, but we do have a little bit of time. And I do want to get back to the wonderful person who had asked a little bit about the video on
I just want to
Destination
comment something.
Crenshaw.
Yes, thank you. I just want to remind of the housekeeping rules. I know some folks came in a little late, so we are taking a few questions now. We will take 3 questions in this segment. If you missed an opportunity to get a question asked, we have a board on the back with our beautiful motto, Vada Amada. So if you have questions, you can write them and paste them on the board. And we also have comment cards, okay? And just so you know, we are streaming live today. And so if you're on Facebook, we have the hashtag BLE Regional Summit 2025. So post, tag yourselves, tag us. We want to hear from you, but please understand we may not be able to get to everything. And if we have to cut your comments short, we hope you understand that as well. We do have some other great presenters today. We will please understand we may not be able to get to everything. And if we have to cut your comments short, we hope you understand that as well. We do have some other great presenters today. We will be hearing from Ms. Presley, the retired, living her best life, former executive director of Asandisi over in St. Paul. I know some folks brought up some things around the Green Line. And then we will be hearing city-by-city reports. So we have representatives from Crystal, hey, Crystal's in the house, Robbinsdale, Brooklyn Park, and City of Minneapolis. So there's a lot of information that we're trying to cover, and then we will go to lunch soon. We have a nice hot meal ready for you all. And so I just wanted to kind of do that level set real quick, be mindful and respectful of everyone's time and essence that they have come into the space with today. And so now, Sam, yes. Hey, Angela. Yeah, what's your question, ma'am? Yeah, it's on you. It's on you.
You mentioned, sir, about changing oppressive systems. Okay, and then when I look on page 13 where it says renters, that's not what the renters that I talk to every day want. They don't want to be homeless. You see what I'm saying? They want to be, I see there's a lot of devaluing of the community when you don't listen to what the, so my thing is when you say change oppressive systems, you're gonna have displacement in housing, you got the devaluation of people, and have you heard anything about what the community is saying and taking a poll in the room? I don't know how many of you live in a community where this train is gonna come through. So I just wanted to kind of have a conversation with you, because there was really no debate and there was no kumbaya, just like we said, because I wanted to kind of have a conversation with you, because there was really no debate and there was no kumbaya, just like we said, because especially when you're not listening to the community, you're not going to get a kumbaya. So, and in relation to the video, what were the problems that led up to the completion of that development, and how did the community feel about that? Did they feel like it brought value to them? You know what I'm saying? So, or their opinion, or how they felt about what Nipsey Hussle wanted to do, because he's a millionaire, he's a celebrity, and they tend to listen to them more than they listen to real people. So those are my concerns. Thank you, Anika, for letting me express myself.
She's coming back in. Yeah, there was a lot in there, so maybe we'll just give Paul a chance to kind of talk a little bit about the Destination Crenshaw. Is that an example?
That's not really the gist of it.
Yeah.
We can save that for later. But the gist of it is, how do you change the oppressive systems that he mentioned when there's going to be displacement in housing up to and including homelessness? So this train does not, it destroys a lot of generational wealth. So I'm just trying to figure out how does that, is beyond the tracks you're building with intention of doing what?
So I'm going to, first I'm going to say thank you, and I'm going to say that one of the ways we do that work is to make sure that people like you come and express where you're at, what you believe, and be part of the process. So I think that's the critical piece. I do believe that in this process, there has been, and I think some people will say not, but I think there has been community connection and work to not displace people. I mean, we have, Ricardo right here, who just, not that long ago talked about the work for anti-displacement, gentrification, right? I'm not going to say that, and I know this, and I've said the train is not a silver bullet. It will not fix oppressive systems that are baked into our society and how it operates, right? So I'm not going to sit up here and say that because I know it's not true. I will say that, though, asking those hard questions and working on these struggles as part of this kind of project is really important, and it's how you get there, right? Why renter? Why? And that working on displacement, homelessness, and all those, the social and cultural and economic issues are critical to the success of this. And if we don't work on those, you're right, the train will be a problem. So I'm going to say that we have to do all of those at the same time, all right? And the train is not a representation of those problems. It's that those societal problems show up on the train, right? But I also will be honest with you that the proof is in the pudding, right? And I've been out here long enough to know that, right? And until we see what happens, all we can do is keep working to make this initiative work better, right? And that's all we can all do, and hold people accountable, our elected officials, the Met Council, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, to do this work differently to get a different result.
And I got a shameless plug real quick. Myself and Julie, we worked on a project with the Met Council Equity Policy Group to establish a toolkit that will do exactly what it is you're saying right now.
So you know what, Angela, that's great. No, I'm not trying to shut you. I'm asking that you connect with project staff during lunch to talk about that, place that on the board so we can incorporate that, because we are planning to address all of your questions. So I think that's great that you're doing that. Thank you. I'm going to invite Kyle Mianulli up from Hennepin County's Transit Communications team, the manager for that, and he can speak to some of the property impacts and the mitigation in place, and also talk about, again, what we've said from the beginning, that a lot of community input has gone into redesign of the Blue Line extension. So I'll let him speak to it better.
One quick, sorry, Kyle, but quick. Nation Crenshaw's website, and I want to respond to that the work at Destination Crenshaw is 100% community-driven and not driven by millionaires, and is continuing to involve community for where that project goes. I just want to put that out there, that this is not something that was just dreamed up off of like one name, right? So I think it's really, really important to say that. And if Jason were here, he would echo that, how hard they work all the time to make sure that this is a community-driven approach. And so I just want to put that out there, because I don't want to misrepresent or have people think their work is misrepresented.
Thank you, Paul. I appreciate that. We're going to, Kyle.
Sure, yeah. Hi, everyone. Kyle Mianulli with Hennepin County. I manage project communications for the Blue Line Extension. So I didn't hear your full question, Angela. Is Angela still here? I was out of the room. Okay. I will still kind of address property impacts, too. This is something that we just sent out a newsletter on. It's got a post on our website. But so with this 60% design milestone that we've been talking about and the finalization of the environmental review period, we do have a pretty good idea for which properties and how many properties are going to be impacted and what those property impacts look like. So the current estimate is that there are 36 buildings throughout the entire alignment that will be purchased by the project. Now, one thing I do want to say about that is that we have gone to great lengths to minimize those types of acquisition impacts whenever we can. I mean, that's something that we're really proud of as a project team, is that we've worked very closely with community, with property owners to minimize those types of we're purchasing a building impact. Now, that being said, it's not possible for us to build a project like the light rail in a way that truly benefits the communities that are here today and the generations that will follow with zero property impacts, right? So it is a balancing act that we always have to find. But that commitment has really shaped a lot of the design decisions that have been made on this project. From relocating from Lyndale, relocating off of West Broadway to 21st Avenue. It's something that has been prioritized at every phase of design, and we feel good about the number of impacts that we've been community and through really intentional design and engineering work. Important to note that every single property owner who is potentially going to have their property purchased has been contacted by the project, and we're in active conversation with them. We have not begun making offers yet. What that process looks like, though, is that we will come and meet with the property owner. There will be an initial offer, and then there's a negotiation, right? Just like any property acquisition. There are really strong protections in place from both state law and federal law then ensure that anyone that does have to relocate because of a property acquisition is well supported throughout that transition. So we pay for the relocation assistance. Property owners are fairly compensated for their properties. And that's something that, we're absolutely committed to and bound by law to provide. From the beginning of this project, we've also recognized that what's required by law may not always be enough to truly keep communities whole and prepared to thrive, like we have also committed to. And so that's where a lot of these other measures that Kelsey talked about earlier through the environmental mitigation have come in. That's where the work of the ACPP that Ricardo spoke to earlier has come in. And that's where partners are continuing to work together at every single level to figure out what are the resources we can bring to communities to not just prevent displacement so that things remain as they are today, but to prevent displacement so that the people in the community today are the ones that experience the transformational benefits that light rail can bring. Catherine. Your reputation precedes you.
We see you.
Sure, yeah. Yep, yeah. So first of all, of the 36 properties that will be, or that are in, that this stage intending to be acquired, it's important to note that we're continuing to refine designs and looking for other ways to avoid those types of property impacts as we move forward too. So those are full building acquisitions, right? Some of those properties are currently vacant or non-functioning. Full building acquisitions, right? Some of those properties are currently vacant or non-functioning. What Catherine's referring to is that there are also temporary easements and partial property acquisitions. What that most commonly looks like is purchasing, a couple feet of someone's front lawn, a strip, so that we can widen a sidewalk, so that we can add parking to a street, things like that. There are a lot of those kinds of impacts. In those cases, so it's either we're purchasing the property outright, and that's, a couple feet strip of your front yard. There are also called temporary easements, which is basically we're paying to rent part of your property in order to be able to construct the project. Then the property is restored to its existing condition once we're done there. There are about 600 of those property impacts. Yeah. Sure. Independent real estate appraisers that work with the property owner and with the project to make that appraisal.
Awesome. This gentleman, and then that's it for questions.
I guess I had out of curiosity, compared to previous light rail projects, 36 property acquisitions a lot, or did previous light rail projects take longer than that?
That's a great question. I don't know the answer off the top of my head. I'm looking at some of the folks in the back, maybe they do.
Yeah.
So compared to other light rail projects, is 36 building acquisitions a lot?
Can I maybe add a little bit
getting
to that?
blank
As a
stares.
team, can I maybe add a little bit
getting
to that?
blank
As the
stares.
team's thinking, I know, like on Green Line Extension, it's a couple hundred. Sometimes it's not just the impact to one property; it's like whose property and what's on that property, right? So you might have a impact to 6 properties, but it might be multifamily housing. So so there's a way to kind of talk about it. So it's not necessarily the number of impacts; it's like who's being impacted on this. And I think that's the conversation. Yeah.
And that's something that we took into account throughout the design process too. I mentioned that some of the buildings are currently vacant or non-functioning properties. Like those were intentional choices to impact those properties instead of other properties that were, currently being lived in or have a business in.
We are getting into some nice detailed questions, and so we'll save some of that for the break. I know there was a gentleman, I believe, that had one last question, and then Paul has some closing thoughts with us as well. So one last question.
He was the last.
Oh, sorry.
Since you called him out, who was the person back here?
A couple things. While you talk about building acquisition, where online, where you find reading it, the appraisal process is distinctly a market value, and
Yep. I'm getting a lot of nodding of heads about that. I know Paul even just said, yeah, that's kind of true. And so that's something that we can talk a little bit more about. I feel like that's almost a day session is long. 1 minute thought from Paul before we break for lunch here. Paul, what do you want to leave with everybody? What should they take away from today?
I think what they should take away is that for the Blue Line to be successful, it's up to all of you and your neighbors and friends to make it work by staying in and keep pushing and holding people accountable and making it work. That's what it's about. Sam is not Kyle, the dream team, even as incredible as they are not going to make this a success. You are.